2025. Into some of the Bank Secrecy Act questions that we had before, but having lawmakers really understand, okay, what is the difference between holding Bitcoin and using the Lightning Network for payments and for remittances and global money flows, and what's a Xiaomi and eCash mint, and all of this stuff that people are building to make this money usable, maybe in different ways than we use it in the United States in the global South, where it's used as a lifeline more than just a savings vehicle. And third is Bitcoin's proof of work consensus, so the energy and mining side of policy. And there, this is really mostly a pure education mission. It's been going well, but it's an uphill battle. I think there have been sort of a lot of smears about Bitcoin, specifically on its energy usage, and a lot of myths about how dirty the energy is. And early on, BPI really indexed to, all right, let's look at the data, let's see where the energy is coming from, and let's really help people understand that a lot of Bitcoin mining comes from flared oil and gas that would otherwise just be lit on fire in a way that's awful for the environment. Bitcoin mining, if you zoom out enough, is going to incentivize the exploitation of stranded renewables in a way that's not otherwise economically viable. And so we really start, just a long-winded way to answer your question, we really start with, okay, what is Bitcoin, and what do policymakers who need to interact with this increasingly important monetary network and asset, what do they need to understand to make good, informed choices?
Appreciate all that perspective. Thank you, gentlemen. Again, we're here with three gentlemen from the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We're about to go over to Isabella Santos. She's going to let us know what's going on. We're waiting on J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, and we will be right back after this. Nice.
Are live from the Venetian in Las Vegas. Behind me is the Nakamoto stage, and we're just a few moments away to hear the Vice President of the United States of America. That is right, the first VP in the world to own Bitcoin is going to give a speech at the Bitcoin conference. Last year, we had the President of the United States, Mr. President Donald Trump. This year, we have J.D. Vance, who's going to give a huge announcement. So stay tuned. Don't leave your seats and wait up, because it's going to be a wild ride. As you can see, everybody's wearing their best attires. Bitcoiners dressed up today as suit coiners. So don't leave. Over to you guys by the news desk.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine News Desk. I'm Frank Corva here, joined by Zach Shapiro, Matt Pines, and Stephen Pollack. Stephen, I'm going to go back to you. I want to talk about the importance of creating the Bitcoin Policy Institute and differentiating Bitcoin from crypto. So we have other think tanks, other organizations in Washington doing important work around blockchain and crypto. But why is it very important that something that specifically focuses on Bitcoin exists in Washington, D.C.?
Sure, it's a great question. Frank, we look at the total market cap of just the crypto, various cryptocurrencies relative to Bitcoin. I think it's obvious why. Bitcoin is not just the largest asset in, among cryptocurrencies. It's one of the largest assets in the entire world. It's what we're setting number 5 right now, top 5 asset in the world. And so we have trillions of dollars. And gold's number 1, Bitcoin's passed silver, it's passed a number of the S&P 500 companies. And when you look at advocacy in Washington, and when we set a number of years ago, when Bitcoin Policy Institute was just getting up off the ground, there are a number of other organizations. There's lobbying groups, there's trade groups, and everyone's playing an important role. There's no CEO of Bitcoin. I don't know if you're aware of that, Frank.
No CEO. Satoshi Nakamoto, not the CEO of Bitcoin.
Yeah. So therefore, Bitcoin doesn't necessarily have a lobbying budget. There are no line items in the Bitcoin company, budget for certain activities. And we said, well, there needs to be a group that is solely focused on Bitcoin. And I think that's made sense. That's playing out. Bitcoin Policy Institute, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. What that means and why that's important is that we're a nonpartisan think tank and advocacy group. We don't play winners and losers. We're here to work with anyone who wants to learn. I don't care. We don't. If you don't know anything about Bitcoin, or maybe you're an elected official who is putting out legislation and would like some advice and some input on that, and to help think through some of the implications, second and third order effects of what this may or may not do. We're there for all of it. And we've really grown and scaled. I'm really proud of the team we've assembled. I think I would say humbly that we've developed and built the deepest bench of Bitcoin experts anywhere, potentially in the world, when it comes to Bitcoin and public policy, Bitcoin mining and energy, and then our friends over at the Human Rights Foundation really helping pinch hit on that side of things as well.
Shout out to the Human Rights Foundation. Earlier today, through the Bitcoin Magazine media handles, we were streaming the Oslo Freedom Forum. So we want to say shout out to everybody over there. I believe the co-founder we mentioned earlier, David Zell, is over there joining them. Very important work. And obviously, I think what's amazing about the work they do and also the messaging coming from the Bitcoin Policy Institute is that just because we're talking about Bitcoin in America, it does not mean Bitcoin is just for America. America is setting an example that this is a technology that countries around the world should embrace, that people around the world should embrace. Matthew, I want to go over to you. That the vibe in DC, I want to talk about it under the new administration. So we obviously know under Biden, we were all quite scared. We didn't know. I think the Winkle vibe put it best. They loved the color orange, but they were worried that they were going to be wearing that color in jail if they continued with their operating their crypto exchange. And we had the Harris administration continuing with some of the policies of the Biden administration. What was it like to see Trump come into office? What changed in DC as a result of that?
Yeah, I think the vibe was a night and day, right? And I think we saw that very early on with the signing of the executive order establishing the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. And so that was a rhetorical, complete 180 from obviously the last few years. I think now we're in a transition from rhetoric to action. And so BPI is very focused on trying to translate.
Matt, if you don't mind, I just got word that the Vice President of the United States of America is about to take the stage. History is about to be made at Bitcoin 2025. We're sending it over to the Nakamoto stage to hear from Vice President J.D. Vance. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this.
This is definitely the biggest crowd I've ever seen. Holy cow. So, what's cool about this conference is that it's all about making history. So, we're making history because this is the biggest Bitcoin conference we've ever done. We're expecting 35,000 people to be here today. We're making history because this is the first Bitcoin conference to ever happen over $100,000 Bitcoin prices. A year ago in Nashville, we made history when we had candidate Donald J. Trump come and address this crowd. He made us some promises. He promised to end the war on crypto. He promised to free Ross Ulbricht. He promised to never sell our Bitcoin. He promised a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And he promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world. In 100 days, promises made, promises kept. And today we're going to make a little bit of history this morning by having the first ever sitting Vice President of the United States of America address the global Bitcoin community. Are you ready? With that, join me in welcoming the Vice President of the United States of America, J.D. Vance.
Thank you. Thank you all. Well, first of all, I want to thank, please, thank you guys. Take your seats. And, you know, the Secret Service is a little bit nervous because I told them these Bitcoin guys really like guns. But they really like the president and vice president of the United States, too. So I think we're doing okay. So I first have to thank David Bailey, grateful for everything that you've done for the Bitcoin community. Thanks in particular for what you did for me and the president, helping us get from candidacy to the White House, because we've done, I think, a lot of good in the past 120 days, and I don't think we could have done it without David's support. I want to also thank the Winklevoss brothers, Tyler and Cameron. These guys are out here somewhere. Who, I got to say, Tyler and Karen, I think really helped break the dam in Silicon Valley. Because if you remember, you go back to June or July of last year, it feels like forever ago. It's not even a year ago, where Silicon Valley, you know, people would whisper in private that they were going to support Donald Trump for president. They would talk about the fact the Democrats had gone too crazy. We'd get Gary Gensler the hell out of there, but they weren't quite willing to say, at least not publicly, that they were going to take the big step and support Donald J. Trump. And Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, I think they were some of the first big names in Silicon Valley to take that step, and a whole host of people followed them. So Cameron and Tyler, thank you for that. And of course, I want to thank the good people at Coinbase, the organizers of this event, and everybody who made this incredible event possible. It's great to be here with Bitcoin at 108,000, at least when I checked this morning, and as Vice President of the United States. It's great to be here. Now, you guys know I get to meet a lot of exciting people in my job, but it's been quite a while since I've been to a conference with this level of energy. Hell, you guys came out here at 9 a.m. after a long night, I'm sure, in Las Vegas. You can't do that without a lot of energy. But I promise I'm not just saying that to juice my own meme coins. But I think it's wrong, actually, to call this just a conference. This isn't a conference of people. This is a movement, and I'm proud to stand with you here today. And I think this conference, this movement of people, is where the future of cryptocurrency in this great country gets decided. So let's start by making one thing abundantly clear. That future is going to be decided by the people, by you, by unelected bureaucrats. Now, as you all probably know, you've got a star-studded lineup here today, including several of my colleagues in the Trump administration. David, Bo, Hester, I know you're all out there. It's great to be among so many friends and allies. So I want to speak for just a few minutes about a few things, and I want to talk a little bit about what we've done in the Trump administration. I want to give you a rundown of what this administration is doing on digital assets policy. But I also want to talk about some of the principles that help guide us as we develop this policy. But before that, I want to speak about why I'm personally optimistic about crypto and what it means for the American people. Now, people ask me why I tend to be bullish on the future of innovation in this country. Now, I spent enough time in Silicon Valley to recognize the difference between good tech, technology that boosts our productivity, makes our lives richer, that grounds us in the real world and complements our day-to-day lives. That's the good technology, but there's also some bad technology out there. And when it comes to crypto, I think the last several years have made it clear that we're talking about genuine, ground-up innovation, one that's already improving the well-being of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. I believe it's 50 million Americans own Bitcoin, and I believe that's going to be 100 million before too long. But it's not just about Bitcoin and about the value that's been generated, the wealth that's been generated by so many millions of our fellow citizens. Through decentralized finance, crypto has transformed how Americans transact with one another. It's expanded access to banking for many who may not otherwise have had it. And every single day, I feel like I see some groundbreaking new use of blockchain tech, whether it's in supply chain management, whether it's in hospitals, or whether it's in changing how we track and store patients' private health records. But for each of these new forward-looking applications, I also feel like there's an incredibly conservative element to crypto technology, and that's as a hedge. Crypto is a hedge against bad policymaking from Washington, no matter what party's in control. It's a hedge against skyrocketing inflation, which has eroded the real savings rate of Americans over the last 4 years. As you all know well, it's a hedge against a private sector that's increasingly willing to discriminate against consumers on the basis of their basic beliefs, including their politics. That includes, of course, debanking users for Second Amendment advocacy or for ties to the first Trump administration. In Canada, the government did the same to kill those big truck driver protests in 2022. Less than a week later, they succeeded. The protests were over. But maybe most importantly, I see crypto as a hedge against one of the most dangerous trends in the digital era in both the public and private sectors. And that's of elites who, rather than innovate themselves, prefer to simply take over and co-opt cutting-edge technologies to assert their control over other people. And I know we believe this in this room. That's not Bitcoin. It'll never be Bitcoin. And you guys are going to make sure that happens. But as you know, there's a new sheriff in town because after 4 years of mistreatment and outright hostility led by Democrat regulators, lawmakers in this country have a choice. Will we lead our nation into a future of financial sovereignty, of innovation, and of prosperity, or will we let unelected bureaucrats and foreign competitors write the rules for us? And I'm here today to say loud and clear, with President Trump, crypto finally has a champion and an ally in the White House. In our administration, we understand the full potential of the digital assets industry, not just as an investment, not just as a flashy technology, but as a symbol and driver of personal liberty for all our citizens. And we are dedicated to seeing that promise fulfilled. The way that we see it, the people in this room are the digital pioneers of the American economy. And that's why our administration is doing something a little unusual in Washington. We're listening to all of you as you blaze the trail of innovation. The innovators in this room are making people's lives better. You're pushing boundaries and solving problems, injecting unprecedented transparency into how we do commerce. And the way we see it, you all deserve a similar level of transparency and clarity. And most of all, you deserve respect and support for your government, not bureaucrats trying to tear you down. Now, that means a few substantive concrete steps. And of course, the first and most important of those steps is straightforward. We've got to clean up the wreckage that the last administration left us. And since day one, that is exactly what we've been trying to do. Our administration, we prioritize eliminating the rules, the red tape, and the lawfare that we saw aimed at crypto by our predecessors. We're ending the weaponization of federal regulations against this community. To put it simply, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is dead and it's not back under the Trump administration. And by the way, it's crazy that was ever even controversial. The idea of using the regulatory power of the government to crush an industry and to crush people who espoused a view that you didn't like, it's crazy. But let my words today serve as Operation Choke Point. Let me serve as its obituary. Now this is my vow to every single person here. You will never see this administration trying to handicap your community or diminish the impact it's had on the economy. Instead, we reject the Biden administration's legacy of death by 1,000 enforcement actions. We reject regulators. Maybe the most important thing that we did for this community, we reject regulators and we fired Gary Gensler, and we're going to fire everybody like him. And we know that people like Gary Gensler, the game that they played is that under the pretense of consumer protection, they attacked every single effort to demonetize our financial markets, and that is over. America. I grew up in a working class family. I believe that America is a place where anyone should be able to make a fortune, no matter where you grew up, what degree you may or may not have. And in recent years, I'm hard-pressed to think of a better place to do so than right here in the digital assets industry. Now, our second substantive step is we're trying to create a clear, pro-growth legal framework for stablecoins in this country. And I know we've got some solid allies in Congress. Is Cynthia Loomis out there today, or she already go home? She already, well, you know, I was supposed to have dinner last night with Cynthia Loomis. We had a little event yesterday. And I looked around, I said, where the hell is Cynthia Loomis? And somebody said, well, she's got a dinner she had to go to. And I said, I'm the vice president. Unless she's having dinner with the president, Cynthia does not have an excuse to skip this event. But we love Cynthia, and I know that she's one of the great advocates for your industry in the United States Congress. Now, I know, led by Cynthia and other great legislators, Congress is hard at work getting the Genius Act passed and across the president's desk as quickly as possible. And that's an important step. It's with good reason, because regulatory uncertainty in this country has pushed way too much stablecoin activity overseas over the last few years. Now, somebody said to me yesterday that Bitcoin has done so much over the last few years with so many headwinds. Wouldn't it be nice to have a government that provided some tailwinds to one of the fastest growing industries in our country? And that's what we aim to do. And once the Genius Act is enacted, it's poised to vastly expand the use of stable coins as a digital payment system for millions of our fellow Americans. It'll also protect coin holders and inject further transparency into the market. And let me be emphatic on one other point. In this administration, we do not think that stable coins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite. In fact, we view them as a force multiplier of our economic might. Dollar-pegged stablecoins, particularly once Genius is enacted, is only going to help the American economy, and it's only going to help the American dollar. So, again, we're optimistic that the Senate is able to move quickly on passing a clean Genius Act, and for the House to follow up and do the same. And of course, once that happens, our great President Trump will sign it into law the minute it comes across his desk. Now, when that's happened, when the administration will then fully shift to our third priority, which is to enact a transparent and tailored regulatory framework for digital assets, one that's pro-innovation and fully incorporates crypto into the mainstream economy. And again, I've talked to so many of you over the last couple of days, and the consistent fear that I hear with all the great things that have happened over the last couple of months, the consistent fear that I hear is that there's still this perception that digital assets are not welcome in the mainstream economy. And let me promise you that our effort to change the policy is purely about changing that. We want our fellow Americans to know that crypto and digital assets, and particularly Bitcoin, are part of the mainstream economy and are here to stay. Now, we think the way to do that legislatively, because again, I hope that our party is in charge for a long time, but nothing is ever guaranteed in politics. So the best way to ensure that crypto is part of the mainstream economy is through a market structure bill that champions and doesn't restrict the extraordinary value that Bitcoin and other digital assets represent. Right now, in this Congress and with this administration, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unleash innovation and use it to improve the lives of countless American citizens. But if we fail to create regulatory clarity now, we risk chasing this $3 trillion industry offshore in search of a friendlier jurisdiction, and President Trump is going to fight to make sure that does not happen. Think about this. By locking in smart, pro-innovation rules of the road, we can also make sure that Democrats or anybody else never wage another war on the crypto community. Now, I've already hit my time here, but before I head back to Washington, let me offer you just a few bits of advice and a few thoughts on where this industry is going. This is one politician's perspective. So take it for what it's worth, maybe a little bit less than 1 Bitcoin right now. But let me say a few things. First of all, I remember when I ran for Senate, the first time I'd ever entered politics back in 2022. And one of the frustrations, honestly, that I had with the crypto community as a person who was one of the only people running for office who actually owned Bitcoin, and I still own a fair amount of Bitcoin today. Think about this. This is during that campaign. That's 2021 and 2022. This feels like an eternity ago, but it was only 4 years ago. Is that I recognize what so many advocates of Bitcoin recognize, which is what the Biden administration was doing. What Gary Gensler was doing was a disaster, and yet there didn't seem to be a real organization pushing back against it at the political level. And let me say that part of the reason that I'm standing here, part of the reason that Bernie Moreno defeated Sherrod Brown in the Senate campaign last year is because you guys got organized and got involved in American politics. And I'm grateful to you for that. But there's a lesson to take from that experience, which is that unless you guys get involved in politics, politics is going to ignore this industry. Now, you took a big step in 2024, and I tell you, every victory that we win, it's only a provisional victory. You know, one of my great mentors in Silicon Valley always told me that, you know, Bitcoin, that the crypto community was about exit and artificial intelligence was about voice. Well, I know that a lot of people in 2024 in this community chose voice. You chose to speak up and you chose to get involved. And I believe you changed the direct trajectory of our country because of it. You got to keep on choosing voice. You know, Bitcoin, of course, is, people call it digital gold. But while Bitcoin is digital, none of you are. None of us are. What happens in the world of politics, what happens in the world of bureaucracy, it will affect even the most transformational and valuable technologies if we don't make the right decisions. So the first piece of advice, the first thing that I'd ask you is to take the momentum of your political involvement in 2024 and carry it forward to 2026 and beyond. Don't ignore politics, because I guarantee you, my friends, politics is not going to ignore this community, not now and not in the future. The second thing that I want to toss out there is that we have to start thinking of the long-term strategic implications of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is owned by about 50 million Americans. A lot of Americans have made a lot of money have created a lot of wealth for themselves, and that's a great thing. But I actually think that where Bitcoin is going is as a strategically important asset for the United States over the next decade. It's one of the reasons President Trump, with the help of our great AI guy, David Sachs, it's one of the reasons why we started the Bitcoin Reserve, because we want to start to put in motion the strategic importance of Bitcoin for the United States government. We know the PRC doesn't like Bitcoin. The People's Republic of China doesn't like Bitcoin. Well, we should be asking ourselves, why is that? Why is our biggest adversary such an opponent of Bitcoin? And if the Communist Republic of China is leaning away from Bitcoin, then maybe the United States ought to be leaning into Bitcoin. And that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. But that's not a vice president standing up here and talking at you. The way that Bitcoin is involved in the strategic future of our country, that's got to be a two-way conversation. And so when I talk about getting involved in politics, one of the things that you guys got to do is continue to give us feedback and continue to tell us the ways in which Bitcoin can play a positive role in the strategic future of this country. I know the Bitcoin Policy Institute is working on this very topic now, but all of you have got to be involved in this conversation, because I don't think any of us want to wake up in a country 10 years from now that is less wealthy and less prosperous because we made bad decisions today. We're going to make the right decisions, but that depends on you guys being part of the conversation. So be part of that conversation. And here's the third thought that I want to leave you with. You know, one of the ways you hear this stated is that crypto is fundamentally a conservative or right-leaning technology, and artificial intelligence is fundamentally a left-leaning or a communist technology. Now, I think that overstates things a little bit in both directions, but there's a fundamental element of truth to it. Now, I haven't been involved in the day-to-day operations of a technology company in about 4 years since I entered politics for the very first time. But what I've noticed is that very smart right-wing people in tech tend to be attracted to Bitcoin and crypto, and very smart left-leaning people in tech tend to be more attracted to AI. Again, that's a gross generalization. It's an overstatement, but there's an element of truth to it. But what I'd ask you all, remember that what happens in AI is very much going to affect in good and bad ways what happens to Bitcoin. And of course, what happens to Bitcoin is very much going to affect what happens in AI. So while this is certainly a Bitcoin conference, and I know we're all proud of what you guys have accomplished over the last 10 years, my final piece of advice is to make sure you're keeping tabs on and staying involved in what's happening with artificial intelligence, because I don't want Bitcoin to be negatively affected by what happens in AI. And most importantly, I don't want America to be negatively affected by what happens in AI. And the best way to ensure that smart people are at the AI conversation is to ensure that Bitcoin is part of the artificial intelligence conversation. Our administration is committed to it. I want you guys to be committed to it as well. I just want to say in the next few years in the Trump administration, we've accomplished a lot, but we have plans to continue to make big progress for this industry and for the American people who rely on it. The whole of government, we're going to need your help. We're going to need your guidance. We're going to need your encouragement. And at times, yes, because this is politics, our politicians are going to need your pressure. So have fun this week, but keep the pressure up. And we'll do great things together for our industry, but most importantly, for the cause of personal freedom and the United States of America. God bless you guys, and thanks for having me.
Wow. Okay, so we have a couple of announcements that we are going to be making here shortly. But to start, I don't know if you've seen the signs, but we're trying to set a record today. We want to do the most Bitcoin transactions that have ever happened in a single day today. So I think the Guinness Book of World Records is here to be the official judge of this, but we're kicking this off with the first Bitcoin transaction, and I'm buying a pin. So I need all of y'all's help today to go buy something with Bitcoin. This is always the danger of doing it live. All right, people, it's a whiff. I'm going to need y'all to do extra transactions to make up for this one, please. Okay, well, so we have two more announcements that we need to make. We have one coming up right now from a special friend of mine, Ryan Cohen. So we're going to play a video from Ryan. He has a special message for the Bitcoin community. And then we need to flip the stage. But in about 20 minutes, we are going to have a special announcement from the mayor of the biggest city in the United States, Eric Adams. So please wait around. What's up, everybody? It's David Bailey from BTC Inc., and I'm here with the man, the myth, legend, Ryan Cohen from GameStop. What's up, Ryan?
What's up? How are ya?
Doing well, man. I'm enjoying these Bitcoin prices. How about you?
It's all good.
Well, let's get started. We're talking innovative corporate strategies. We're talking pioneering from a dying business to a thriving business. How'd you do it?
When I took over, the company was a piece of crap and losing a lot of money. The company was under a lot of pressure, moving from physical games to digital downloads. So you have to cut costs. You have to cut costs very aggressively and bring in fiscal discipline aggressively and bring in fiscal discipline. And we did. And retail is a tough business, but it was a big focus on getting costs under control. You've got a lot of macro headwinds going against the company. A lot of money. The company was under a lot of pressure, moving from physical games to digital downloads. So you had to cut costs. You had to cut costs very aggressively and bring in fiscal discipline. And we did. And retail is a tough business, but it was a big focus on getting costs under control. You've got a lot of macro headwinds going against the company. You have a move from physical games to digital downloads, and we needed to get the costs under control and also shift the business from being so reliant on video games to collectibles, which we've done. And so now there's a big focus on trading cards. We're doing grading in a bunch of stores, and we're selling a lot of trading cards, both in sports and TCG. But the company today is profitable in the US, and we've gotten our costs under control. You had a lot of executives and directors that were very short-sighted, and effectively they were making decisions that what they call in corporate America in good corporate governance, which is effectively screwing shareholders. So we got rid of all of that nonsense and we focused on running the business profitably.
Well, you also made some news about a month ago or so that you raised some money that you might use to buy Bitcoin. I guess the $1 million question that everyone wants to know is, has GameStop bought Bitcoin?
We have bought Bitcoin.
Okay, how much?
We currently own 4,710 Bitcoins.
Let's go. Let's go. So tell us about that. Why did GameStop decide to buy Bitcoin?
It was, if the thesis is correct, then Bitcoin and gold as well can be a hedge against global currency devaluation and systemic risk. Bitcoin has certain unique advantages compared to gold. The portability aspect of it, it's instantly transferable across the globe, whereas gold is bulky and very expensive to ship. The authenticity, it's instantly verified via the blockchain. The storage, you can easily secure Bitcoin in a wallet, whereas gold requires insurance and it's very expensive. There's the scarcity element of it as well. There's a fixed supply of Bitcoin as gold. Certain technological advances, the supply of gold is still uncertain. And then ultimately there's the asymmetric upside. Gold is a more mature market. It's roughly around 20 trillion of market capitalization, whereas Bitcoin today is about 2 trillion. And if the thesis is correct, ultimately Bitcoin becomes digital gold, adopted, then there's more upside. But we'll see what happens. Nobody has a crystal ball, but that's the current thesis.
Well, congratulations. And I feel like GameStop is the ultimate meme stock and Bitcoin is the ultimate meme money. And if you combine the two, you get a meme super cycle. So, what's next for GameStop and Bitcoin? Are you going to buy more Bitcoin? Is this the next micro strategy, the next Meta Planet, or even better?
We're not going to call our shots in advance for obvious reasons, but GameStop is following GameStop's strategy. We're not following anyone else's strategy.
Okay. So to summarize, embrace the GameStop theory. I like it. So final question. The world is watching right now. Everyone at the conference is watching this interview. We probably have 10 million, 50 million people on the live stream. What is the message you'd like to send the global Bitcoin community and everyone who's watching this interview right now?
No pressure. No pressure. Don't follow GameStop. Make your own decisions independently. It's my message. Just do whatever you're comfortable with.
Don't trust, verify. Let's go.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for hopping on. Congratulations on your Bitcoin buy. To many more. Let's go. Thank you.
YOLO.
YOLO.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin News Desk presented by Mara. We're here at Bitcoin 2025. The people are streaming in. Just heard from the Vice President of the United States of America, J.D. Vance, as well as an interview with David Bailey, the head of BTC Inc., the man behind this whole conference here, as well as his interview with Ryan Cohen, the head of GameStop. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into what J.D. Vance just said. A shout out to the Bitcoin Policy Institute in the talk. I think he may have said Bitcoin Policy, left out the Institute, but we know what he was getting at there. Matthew, I want to go over to you to start there. What were some of your takeaways? What did it mean to hear the Vice President of the United States shout out the work that you're doing?
Yeah, that was remarkable. Really had a great conversation with him yesterday, and it was really encouraging, exciting to hear him kind of resonate with some of the themes of that discussion on stage. And I noticed kind of a marked difference between, I think, the scripted portion of the speech and kind of when he sort of ad-libbed at the end, and it was a really revealing indication of how he thinks about the sophisticated intersection of his views on this sort of era of digital disruption. Right, we have an acceleration of these changes to our global system. AI, obviously, he pointed at, is going from the fringes to the front door of policymakers. And Bitcoin is on the same trajectory. And it's all happening in the context of US-China competition and a competition over power, but also over values. What sort of values will be embodied in the technological systems that we're increasingly being sort of either rolled into as a kind of digital serfs, or whether we have sovereignty over. And I think that was the most important takeaway I had from the speech, right? Which was a framing of Bitcoin in this strategic context for the future of technology and human freedom. And I think he really articulated a view of Bitcoin's significance in that fight, in that live policy battle, which is taking place really at all levels, right? Not just in the United States, but around the world, and between governments and large multinational corporations and individual technologists that are building peer-to-peer systems. I think it was a call to action from the administration to help them, right? These are fast-changing policy issues and technologies, and they're trying to get their arms around it. And these things are difficult and complicated. And as you pointed out, like the intersection of these two issues is also driving a lot of the policy debates and political frictions inside our society and around the world over who has power, right? And who's going to use these technologies to further their political agendas. And so this is, I think that was a really interesting articulation of the intersection of these issues and really the things that BPI and we are obsessed about. And so it was a really rewarding kind of affirmation that the work we're doing at BPI is strategically significant, right? We say it, right? We say those words, but sometimes it's just words, right? To hear it coming from the vice president adds a gravity to the significance.
Yeah, and he is a technology proponent, generally speaking, but I do want to dig a little bit deeper into maybe this relationship between Bitcoin and AI. Zach, I'm going to come over to you. Are these things different or are they symbiotic? Should we be looking at something like Bitcoin as more of a right-wing entity or thing and AI as more of a left-wing thing? Is this the proper context?
Absolutely. So I actually think one of the most interesting things that the vice president said is that is not the context we should look at them through, right? It is maybe contingently true that people on the left tend to gravitate towards AI a little bit more and people on the right tend to gravitate towards Bitcoin and blockchain technology. However, it's not a left-right thing, right? It's not that simple. There are so many axes on which these two technologies interact. So one is in an era where AI makes it cheaper and easier to create deepfakes and undermines the idea that we understand what we see with our eyes. Bitcoin has absolute cryptographic proof, right, that you hold your keys, and that can be a really important counterweight. In a world where countries are going to move to incredible centralized control of their money through central bank digital currencies, where you can use AI to surveil what all of your citizens are doing, decide whether they are, should go up or down in the credit score, and maybe their personal inflation rate changes. Bitcoin is absolutely fair and has the same rules for everyone and is a counterweight to that. In authoritarian countries, they're going to use AI. We're seeing this in China to control the population. Bitcoin takes power away from centralized leaders. And so this is much more about an individual rights versus centralized control story. And AI obviously is an amazing technology. I'm sure we all use it, near daily at this point, and it's not going away, and it's going to become more and more an important part of our lives. But I think left unchecked, there are a lot of scary aspects to AI. And the vice president referenced good technology and bad technology. I think Bitcoin here is clearly one of the good technologies, and even more exciting, it allows AI through the sort of counterweight of real decentralized, real individual rights oriented architecture to allow AI to perhaps on balance be a better technology than it otherwise would end up being.
So we need that symbiosis between Bitcoin and AI. Yes, Matthew, back to you.
Yeah, the other point of this, and I'm aware that the vice president has been tracking the AI policy conversation quite closely. There was a white paper that was produced called AI 2027, which has sort of grabbed a lot of attention inside Washington, D.C., which sort of lays out this plausible scenario of kind of an arms race dynamic between US and China and a rapid acceleration of AI capabilities. And it's kind of woken a lot of people up inside Washington to the urgency of these questions. And I think he understands that there are potentially similar types of urgent policy questions that are going to land on the doorstep of these decision makers from Bitcoin's perspective in the next few years at the same time. And they need to get smart on all of them and how they're going to intersect together to ensure that America's national security interests, America's values sort of win out. And it's a non-trivial question, right? Whether that is going to lead to a positive outcome for the values that we have and our democratic systems here. And so I think it was a real demonstration of where those gaps are, right? Politicians usually don't like to say they don't know the answers, right? They don't like to say that we haven't gotten this figured out, right? They like to kind of project confidence and they have a plan. I think he basically was saying, he's like, we want your ideas. Like, this is such a fast changing and sort of unsettled question. We need folks that are on the ground actually building these technologies and seeing how they're intersecting with other technologies to drive policy. And that was a really encouraging statement.
Yeah, I'd have to say, for the people listening out there, from my time that I've spent in the White House, the amount that people are really asking for input, people in the administration saying, or senators speaking from the main stage yesterday saying, we need you to speak to us. We need to learn about this, right? We know that a lot of senators, congresspeople in the U.S. government are a bit older. Hopefully we see some new blood in recent years, but it is nice to hear that even people who might be a little bit older, who don't necessarily have, such incredible incentive to dive into learning more about this technology, are willing to hear more about it from those who are willing to teach them. Stephen, I saw you over there taking notes during the talk. What's on your mind? What did you take away from the talk?
Well, he used the term digital pioneers to describe everyone who's here today and everyone who's working in this space. Now, I think that's a pretty accurate description. And I think the awareness of, not just Bitcoin Policy Institute, but other stakeholders, everyone in the industry, whether it's mining or whether it's individuals out here who are attending the conference and are very passionate about this. I think the awareness that, hey, these guys are first in the door. They know this inside and out. We need to really listen. And he used the term listen. They said the administration wants to listen and learn. And I think that is an incredibly different posture than what we've seen in the past. And hopefully when we're talking about different sides, we're seeing that from future administrations, regardless of party affiliation. I think the vice president hit a number of different kind of key buckets today. So it was really cool to kind of see him unpack the different values of Bitcoin and the different applications. I think he said it's really important. Bitcoin guarantees expanded access to banking to those who don't have access to banking. He mentioned using Bitcoin as a hedge against central government control, as a hedge against inflation, and as a hedge against private sector picking winners and losers type of work and debanking. So he hit all the kind of high notes there. He fired Gary Gensler 3 or 4 more times. I
think we had a little. So for those who might not have referenced it, in 2024 in Nashville, Donald Trump got quite the reaction when he said that he was looking to fire Gary Gensler when he came into office. Vice President J.D. Vance maybe piggybacking on some of that energy.
The president said, "Oh, you like that one," and then he said it again. It was a really funny moment.
Gary Gensler didn't do much for himself to making friends, so he deserves it a little bit. We do have to cut to ad break for just a moment. We're here at Bitcoin 2025. I'm talking with 3 great minds from the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We're cutting to an ad. We'll be right back after this.
What is the key to progress? Is it more machines, more money, more buildings? Or are those just the outcomes? What if progress relies on having purpose?
If a Bitcoin was the size of a quarter, all 21 million of them would fit inside a single shipping container. But to fit the dollars the Fed prints on average every day, you'd need 72 shipping containers. Each year, you'd need 26,280 containers. And to fit what they've printed in the last decade, well, you'd need a lot more than that.
Satoshi released Bitcoin. The world was forever changed. No one realized it.
This is the once in a century opportunity.
And it's just the beginning.
Bitcoin is like digital gold.
So I view Bitcoin in line with the next evolution of humans engineering a better world.
I think the story of the past few years is Bitcoin going from a niche interest into a respectable global macro asset.
Bitcoin Policy Institute has become a thought leader.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine News Desk presented by Mara. It's day one here at Bitcoin 2025, and the news is absolutely pouring in. You heard from Vice President JD Vance. You saw a special appearance from the CEO of GameStop announcing that he's buying 4,710 Bitcoin, putting it on the balance sheet. We're back with a special panel to break it all down. We've got Zach Shapiro, Matt Pines, and Stephen Pollock. Corporate adoption going absolutely parabolic. This is the fourth or fifth announcement we've heard from a major corporate buying Bitcoin. Ryan Cohen coming out saying devaluation is pushing him to hedge against the assets that are falling in value, bonds, stocks, things like that. Zach, GameStop, they're here. The meme coin of the last cycle unites with this cycle's zeitgeist. Why should we be excited?
Well, look, on the surface, this seems like sort of a silly thing, right? GameStop is a meme stock, but when you think about what it means for GameStop to pivot to a Bitcoin treasury strategy, I think it says two things. One is that a lot of the sort of Wall Street countercultural energy behind the GameStop short squeeze, which I think is more political than people realize. It was about going back.
It was very anti-financial system.
Right. Is sort of merging with the same ethos within Bitcoin, right? This real grassroots, ground up, decentralized movement. And then second, and I think this connects to a lot of what the vice president just said, it really, the broader phenomenon of Bitcoin treasury companies, I think is a strong validation of Bitcoin as a reserve asset, right? This is a way forward for companies that want to hedge against inflation, that want to hedge against geopolitical risk. And this is not the same as like, oh, we're doing some crazy issuance, right? They could easily do their own meme coin and make a lot of money. This is really, we found this tool that really works well on the balance sheet, and we are going to lean into that, honestly, as a method of self-preservation.
Let's put some numbers behind it. 800,000 Bitcoin now owned by corporations. This seems like it's becoming real, and it's becoming a movement. Matt, Steven, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Bitcoin treasury, thing is kind of the meta, right? I think we're seeing a lot of fast follows. It's going to be, I think, the main sort of financial engine that powers, a lot of Bitcoin accumulation on these treasury balance sheets, and you're seeing people carve out different niches, exploring different strategies. It could be, I think, we're sort of just in the incipient stages of that process playing out. I think we're going to see this start to scale, not just vertically inside the United States, but horizontally across the world. I think fundamentally, I sort of think about the treasury strategies as just a meme wrapped in either regulatory or legal arbitrage, wrapped in financial engineering, and kind of getting this sort of mimetic flywheel to get the MNAV premium that then you can sort of harvest to do the Bitcoin acquisition, do the financial engineering. I think some organizations will do it smartly, will do it in an accretive basis without taking out too much risk, and those will win. And then there'll be people that get out ahead of their skis and they'll blow up. And so I think we're just in the beginning stages of that. I think everyone's jumping in with their own particular take on it. But I think this will be one of the defining phenomena of the next Bitcoin cycle.
But Stephen, it seems like the message here also to government states is that the pressure is on. The Bitcoin supply is capped only 21 million Bitcoin. Does this corporate adoption put pressure on things like the strategic Bitcoin reserves as these companies accumulate? We've seen Michael Saylor over almost 600,000 Bitcoin. The question now is, if governments get involved, how can they catch up? Is that a conversation that you're having?
Sure. I don't know about putting pressure, but I think it definitely raises eyebrows, and I think it definitely adds fuel to the argument that it just makes sense, whether you're an individual, whether you're a company, or whether you're a nation state, that it just makes sense to hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet. It's common sense, and I think common sense is really becoming a little more common these days. We're seeing, companies from all over the world and nations across the globe adopting Bitcoin and adding Bitcoin and realizing, I don't think we have enough.
Well, we're about to hear another special announcement added to the schedule last minute, last night. I'm talking about Eric Adams, mayor of New York, the largest city in America. Unknown what he could announce, but just moments away on the main stage. If you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, and X, appreciate you staying tuned. Zach, I want to turn it over to you to talk about states, municipalities that are adopting Bitcoin. We've seen Roswell come out, become the first city. We saw New Hampshire come out to be the first state. Can we talk a little bit about what's going on at the local level here and maybe hint at what we could see from Eric Adams?
Absolutely. So I think there are two sort of interesting hints that we have about what we can see at the state and local level. The first is to look at unique challenges that states and municipalities have compared to, for example, the United States government or another sovereign government. And that is, unlike the US federal government, states cannot just issue treasury bills in the same way. States cannot just deficit and spend into oblivion in the same way. They can't print money, right? They don't have the same money printer that the combination of the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve has. And at the same time, states and cities have long-term obligations. There are pension funds. You need to keep your general account funded. And you are just as exposed to inflation as anyone else is, and you don't have the same levers. So in many ways, for states and local municipalities, Bitcoin is a more important tool than it is. I mean, it's pretty important for sovereign countries too, but there are real exigencies at the state level that don't exist at the nation state level. And so I think we're going to see a lot of creativity from states and from forward-looking cities about how do you bring Bitcoin into the mix, whether that is a standalone strategic Bitcoin reserve, whether that is a mix of Bitcoin into pre-existing investment funds that are in the state, whether that's some sort of debt and Bitcoin mix. I think like states really do need to think about what the options are going forward. And then the other, I think, hint we have, if you listen to the vice president's speech just now, it sounded a lot different than now President Donald Trump's speech in Nashville last year, which was more political. It was a campaign stop, but it was a lot more just sort of signaling to the industry, I'm on your side, I'm here to listen. What we heard from J.D. Vance that was remarkable, including the shout out to BPI, is that a lot of our both BPI, but really also the industry's messaging is getting through. And there have been a lot of really smart folks that have come out with white papers with really smart ideas on, in J. Vance's case, how to leverage Bitcoin for the betterment of the United States, but also at the state and local level, there have been a lot of really smart thinkers. And so my guess is what we hear from Mayor Adams probably will come directly from, people who've thought about this carefully from within Bitcoin world.
Yeah. We should clarify a little bit of what's happening on the state level. So New Hampshire becoming the first U.S. state to pass a strategic Bitcoin reserve in May, closely followed by Arizona, though not a strategic Bitcoin reserve, more to do with the forfeiture of assets. And Texas finally, last but not least, passing SB 21 from the House and Senate, but still waiting on a governor's signature. Matt, you were saying?
Yeah, so I think last year was the introduction of this idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve that the president announced in Nashville, and BPI did a lot of work to try to codify what that looks like, but how to cash that out in terms of hard policy at the federal level. Where a bunch of white papers, draft executive orders, and have been strong supporters both in the executive side and legislative side this year to help get that executed and codified in law. And so we want to prioritize that. It's a lot of the focus. But now there's an additional idea that's kind of come on the table that was really put together in rigor by Andrew Hones, who co-authored a white paper with me on this concept of a bit bond,
right?
Kind of fusing Bitcoin with a traditional debt instrument. The white paper we wrote and sort of have been having conversations inside Washington D.C. is about federal government debt. The Treasury Department issuing a debt security that has essentially a Bitcoin kicker built in.
This is really the playbook that Michael Saylor started, now moving to governments. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, essentially using traditional debt securities that have traditional funds that buy and sell those particular products, but maybe have a restriction in terms of their mandate that prevents them from actually holding or getting direct access to Bitcoin, essentially leveraging those sort of trap pools of capital that want to have some Bitcoin exposure. And so there are sovereign, debt markets. Obviously, the federal government would have a strong, leverage here to kind of counterbalance the fact that they're having to devalue their currencies and potentially, the bonds that they try to sell, and leveraging Bitcoin to kind of counterbalance that and kind of bring in new demand for those bonds and also get a lower interest rate. And that same logic applies to any debt issuer, right? So not only applies to sovereigns, but applies to municipalities. And so I think this could be the start of a new era, just like SBR was kind of the meme that became a reality last year and into this year, is this idea of bit bonds going from white papers to reality. I think that's going to be interesting, phenomenon to see play out.
Well, of course, we're talking about Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, about to take the stage, talking about what he might announce, talking about municipalities, states, why they are adopting Bitcoin, the nature of their balance sheets. Stephen, over to you, maybe to theorize what we're about to hear, and could it incorporate something like a bit bond, like a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or maybe could this be something else? We saw Square yesterday come out, integrate Bitcoin payments, a hot narrative as well.
Sure. Well, I think all options are on the table. I'm really interested to hear what Mr. Adams has to say. I think, and the reason all options are on the table are because of speeches like we just heard from the vice president and what we heard from President Trump last year. Anytime you get that kind of political air cover from a president, a vice president, multiple U.S. senators, what we're seeing at this conference last year and this year, that kind of air cover, it allows these others, whether municipalities or states, to come in and feel very comfortable making what type of announcement he's going to make, and taking these massive strides that we're seeing. And so I think, the 1-2 punch we're seeing with a vice president coming, sharing, kind of rehashing the promises made, promises kept that we've seen from the speech from the president last year, whether it's Operation Choke Point 2.0, and he's saying that's this is its eulogy and all those sorts of things, really are part and parcel of what we're about to hear from the mayor.
And I would mention that, the New York City, this is really the financial heart of the world, not even just the United States. Zach, over to you. I'm curious your thoughts. What message does it send? Just that Eric Adams here about to make a special announcement. Maybe it's the SBR, maybe it's Bitbonds, we don't know, but he's here and talking.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're not going to get any disagreement from me. I'm a New Yorker. That is, in many ways, the financial capital of the world. I think one really important thing to contextualize what we're going to hear from Mayor Adams is that whatever we're going to hear is likely a template for what states are going to do. And just to chill one of our BPI initiatives, we're about a month out from releasing a state legislative toolkit. We think when we have forward-looking mayors or forward-looking governors at the state level that have ideas of how to regulate Bitcoin, we want to be as supportive as possible. And so we are working with lots of people across the Bitcoin industry to leverage their specific subject matter expertise. And I've been piloting this initiative along with one of our superstar associates, Zach Cohen, to give states basically a menu of options, pre-written legal language that they can pick, decide, okay, do I want to do a straight SBR where we put Bitcoin in state self-custody and then we hold it for a long time? Do we want to figure out how to integrate Bitcoin into pension plans to leverage Bitcoin's liquidity profile versus other types of, for example, treasury securities a state might have? Do we want to do self-custody? Do we want a qualified custodian? Do we want multi-institutional custody? Is it important to insure our Bitcoin holdings? All of these questions that states can plug and play based on the best advice we're able to get from the experts within our industry.
Well, I should add also that Eric Adams, identifies as a Democrat, but now maybe running as an independent. This does show that Bitcoin is crossing aisles, though we might be hearing from a lot of Republicans. Stephen, Matt, your thoughts on just the nature of Eric's presence here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the combination of the, on the ground technocratic policy work that we do, and then politics. Politics is about capturing attention, right? Distinguishing yourself as a candidate, right? And carving out a reputation that you are at the frontier, that you're willing to take calibrated risks to advance the interests of your constituents, to make sure that your city, your state, your country leads in a competitive global environment. I think, New York City, has a certain reputation, right? It's the mantle of financial gravity in the world system, but the financial system is changing, and there are other countries and other sort of city states around the world that want to steal their thunder. So countries and states have to kind of be innovative to stay competitive.
And of course, so much more to come today. We're throwing it to the Nakamoto stage. You're about to hear from Eric Adams with a special announcement. We'll be right back at Bitcoin 2025.
calling Bitcoin a strategic asset for the United States. We follow that up with GameStop announcing their first Bitcoin purchase. And now it is my distinct pleasure to welcome the mayor of the financial capital of the world, New York City, Mayor Eric Adams. Please come to the stage.
Just want to take a moment to put on the uniform of the day. Let me say this to you. Why am I here? And I want to answer 3 questions. Why am I here? Why now? And why Bitcoin? Because we're the same. You know, I reflect back when I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. I was bullied in school, called the dumb student. I couldn't read. Little did I know that I was undiagnosed dyslexic. And people laughed at me. But I asked a question to them now. When you go from dyslexic to being elected to the largest city in America, that says a lot. And we're the same. Because people laughed at you when you talked about Bitcoin. And when I became the mayor that invested my first 3 paychecks in Bitcoin, they laughed at me. Well, who's laughing now? And David has a real vision. And I was introduced earlier to David's wife and his mom. You should be proud of your son because he understands the power of what we are about to do. I want to throw a name out to you. Betsy Ross, 1776, she created our flag. She was not some great intellect. She was not some great government regulator. She was not some philosophical, intellectual person who wanted to decide what was going to be the foundation of our country. She was an ordinary person like you and I, hardworking, blue-collar people. But that flag still stands today. And that is what Bitcoin is about. It is not being led from the intellectual giants that are going to determine how we're going to pay for our goods and services. It's being led by everyday working class people in America. And just as our flags still fly, Bitcoin is going to continue to fly in our country. And New York City is going to lead the way. We are going to be the leader because we know the power of innovation and what innovation has to offer. These conferences are crucial. And when we held our summit in New York a few weeks ago, we held it with a clear focus that it is time for you no longer to go through the lawfare that you went through and had to flee our city. New York is the empire state. We don't break empires, we build empires. We're saying to you, come back home. You have a mayor that is the crypto mayor, is the Bitcoin mayor, and I want you back in the city of New York where you won't be attacked and criminalized. Let's get rid of the Bitcoin license and allow us to have the free flow of Bitcoin in our city. But let's go further than that. We have financial instruments for all other bonds. You can have tax-exempt bonds and other bonds. It is time for the first time in the history of this city to have a financial instrument that is made for those who are holders of Bitcoin. I believe we need to have a bit bond. And I am going to push and fight to get a bit bond in New York so you can do those same bond investments in New York City. Thinking big and being unafraid of the future is what we want to do. So I say to all of you who are here, summoning, come out of the shadows, come back to the city. You no longer have to be afraid to be part of this major industry that has been attacked, it has been criticized, and it has been denied the opportunity to move forward and grow. We must lead the way. We must be a city and country of innovators and creators, not haters. And even those haters that laughed at us in the beginning, we have to ask in a uniform manner, who's laughing now? Look at how Bitcoin has grown. And we must match what is happening on the national level with what we're doing on a local level. If it grows in New York, it would cascade throughout the entire country. And we will normalize and allow young people to know the evolution and power of the Bitcoin universe. This is such a natural formation. If you go back to 1200 BCE, they were using shells for goods and services. We moved to the coins being made, then the paper currency, and then the credit cards. This is the next evolution that we must embrace. And those who are not willing to embrace it, they need to get the hell out of our way because we're going to embrace it and we're going to move it forward. But I think in my conclusion, Vice President Vance said something that you should all listen to. We must be part of the political strength in our country. In golf, they say you drive for show, but you putt for dough. Local politics will determine what happens to this industry. So as you leave Las Vegas and go back to your local municipalities, identify the lawmakers who embrace this industry and not want to destroy it. Get engaged in local politics, not only your national politics. Let your voices be heard. You showed the power of the Bitcoin community. We're going to use Bitcoin and blockchain for our birth certificates. We're going to use Bitcoin to pay off fines and taxes. We're going to allow our young people to understand what it is to be part of this industry. But we need you on the ground. And I thought the message was clear. Go on the ground and show the power. Because if you don't show the power to elected officials, they're going to show the power to destroy your industry. You must win. You are the Bessie Ross of the day. It's everyday people that make this country what it is. And I know you hear a lot of naysayers on the greatness of America, and one poll said that 52% of Americans don't deeply love our countries, and our young people are being radicalized against the country. Well, I'm a 48%er. I still believe every day, and I still pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the greatest country on the globe, and this is one of the greatest movements that's been made in this country right now. Keep fighting on, the Bessie Ross of the day. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine News Desk presented by Mara. It's day one of the largest Bitcoin conference in the world here at the Venetian in Las Vegas. 30,000 people are behind us. A Guinness Book of World Record attempt in progress. You heard from JD Vance, Ryan Cohen, and Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, the financial leader of the world, taking the stage. Two subjects there that we're going to hone in on with our guest panel today. Zach Shapiro, Matt Pines, and Brandon Green, head of the Bitcoin conference, now joining us. Again, the two themes from Eric Adams' speech that we're going to touch on. Bit bonds are here, financial instruments backed by Bitcoin. The mayor coming out and saying he'll launch a Bit bond, light on details, but also saying that he'll get rid of the Bit license. This is a piece of regulation legislation that has harassed the industry for years, held back progress, and now potentially a sign that it could be removed from law. So, Zach, let's start with you with Eric Adams. What did you take away?
Hey guys, it's your main man BTM here, bringing you back to the BTM Crypto News Network. So we're going to take a break from the Bitcoin conference. Just going to sum up some things. So earlier we had Vance talk about crypto and how crypto is here to stay and how digital assets is the future. Sorry about that. And then we had the mayor of New York talk as well. So just wanted to get your opinion on some of that. And I'm going to close this live stream and open up another one. I just didn't want it to run too long because there's a space limitation on StreamYard. But thanks for joining. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit your main man up with a super chat. Just trying to keep the lights on BTM Crypto News Network. But thanks for joining, and we're going to fire it back up. We're just going to close this down so we don't run the live stream too long. So look for the next live stream to pop back up. So give me about 5 minutes, and we're going to come back at you with the next live stream. But again, thanks for joining, and we'll be right back. And it's your main man, BTM, signing out. And remember, stay dangerous. Miner out.